right, it's official now.
It's official. Love it.
Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for jumping on with West Coast Whiskey Club here. So today we're joined with Ryan Mills, the national brand ambassador on the East Coast. Thank you for jumping in. You were kind of a last minute add-on for us because our guy Ian got stuck in some bad weather delays, and so we really appreciate you jumping in here and covering for him. And Matt Ward, managing director. Um, Thank you so much. So we got the big guns in here today. So this is
I'm
this is
actually the
great.
janitor,
Oh,
just so you know.
well, hey, you get to drink a lot of bourbon
You're the
either way.
janitor.
He cleans up all the messes.
Yeah, right. Now, we
And
appreciate you guys for hanging out with us for a little. I'm not sure of how you do your formats for these, so it's a little new for us for working with you guys. But no, thanks for having us on. We're it's just a pleasure to spend a little time with you. And what I would say, if you have questions, throw them in the chat, or we can stop at any point if anyone wants to jump in. And that's the whole point of this is like, as Matt, ask as many questions as you can. We're a very open book here. We have been since the start, and it's kind of I don't want to say trait, but it's part of the culture of who we are. So we don't hide anything. We're pretty straightforward folks, and that's a little bit of how we start the history. 2018 was actually when Penelope LLC was actually registered as a DBA. And Mike started the company with Kerry. And Danny, our master blender, is Mike's school friend from the fourth grade.
wow,
They were actually neighbors for a very long time. Uh, Basically, fortuitously, how this came about, Mike loves bourbon. In fact, all of us love it. We were very good at drinking it, and then we had to figure out how to blend it. That's pretty much how this went. Um, but no, it's Mike basically wanted to start a company and he saw a few things happening, right? So in 2018, allocations were getting harder. I mean, I think you all felt that definitely when you've been going in the stores. It was getting a little harder from 18 onwards. Prices were rising and Mike's like, there's got to be a slightly different way to look at this because I enjoy drinking it and I'm finding it hard to get the stuff I like to get, right? So there was born Penelope and if everyone's not aware, Penelope is actually Mike's daughter. So it's named after his daughter. And that's their first child, Mike and Carrie's first child. We're actually now five kids deep in the family. So between Mike and Danny, they've all got a little interesting legacy as we'll go through this. Um, but yeah, Mike actually cold called, just sent the email to hello at mgp.com, right? Reached out to him and he was actually reading a lot of articles about like bulk whiskey and he always jokes about this but he's like chat GP, who's the biggest whiskey producer in the world, I'm going to call them. And he called MGP and got a meeting. And bear in mind, like Mike had never stepped foot in a distillery.
hmm,
And to give you the background for all of us, prior to becoming part of Luxco, we were 13 people. We'd got to about 22 states, and there was only one person on staff that had ever worked in the liquor industry.
wow, that's a
So,
bold move.
yeah. So Mike comes from him and his brother owned a mattress firm. I always joke with Mike, he's the mattress king of New Jersey, where he lives. Um, Danny was actually a civil engineer. I'm from the hotels business. Ryan here actually comes from electronics business. Ian was a producer in TV and film. We got people on our staff that came from real estate. And Mike, Mike's view of the world, he's an entrepreneur, right? So he'd worked at Salesforce. He'd built this really big company with his brother, and he's a really big proponent of entrepreneurship. And he's like, look, it's a pretty straightforward deal. If you know where your source is, you can pretty much build everything around it.
Mm,
Now, he put this the best way last night, and when we were talking with some other folks, but he was like, we didn't have a pot to pee in because he barely, scrabbled the money together. I mean, this is like, 50, $60,000 start. This was like not big money. And I think that's really important in the story and the brand because Sure, you can go get big loans and, throw money at situations, but you don't learn that way. And the guys went, and in fact, how Danny got hooked up with this, there was supposed to be another gentleman going with Mike to the distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and couldn't get away from some family commitments. So Danny's like, "Hey, I'm in." Got on a flight with Mike,
Wow.
and they'd never set foot in a distillery in their lives. In fact, the meeting they went to had all the mash bills laid out, and they were just tasting through stuff. And one thing that I guess they hadn't realized at that time is that you could blend things. And in fact, I always jokingly say during when I do dinners, it's like, you know, the salespeople in the MGP room were like, "Hey, don't give up your day jobs, guys." But they brought some folks in and they were like tasting through all these different mash bills, and they said, "Well, guys, you could actually put all these together." And it was like the aha moment for the guys because the principle of Penelope, and I think you said it, Jay, right up front, is like the little bit of something for everybody, right?
Hmm.
And that's actually kind of the kind of basis of where we started. So when they're in that room blending, we found those three sources, and it's a little unusual, right? You've got a 99 corn barrels, you've got 21 rye barrels, 45 wheat barrels, and they've all got an omnipresent bit of malted barley in there. You know, 2018, 2019, a lot of people were starting to buy product from MGP. So you got to stand out from that crowd, right? And they worked in that room for quite a bit and figured out. Now, just to give you a profile perspective, Danny's on the sweeter end of the spectrum, and Mike is more on the rye end of the spectrum. So they're very polar opposites in what they like. And I think that's how they got to the point of like, hey, we can take some corn barrels of sweetness, we can take some rye barrels, and then meet in the middle with a little heat coming from the wheat. And yeah, that's how our four grain was basically came about, and that was the first product. So hand sold in New Jersey at the back of the trunks of cars, and we laugh and say it was the first form of e-com delivery to your home
Wow. Yeah.
with bourbon, just delivered as fast as possible.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and then basically, you kind of fast forward a little bit in the history, but. Yeah, a lot of folks came on, and we were 13 people-ish around that prior to the acquisition. And give you an idea, like we were doing about up to that point of acquisition, about 22 states, and everything was out of a 3,000 square foot building.
Wow.
So continuous Jenga, right?
Yeah.
And one of the really amazing things about what we figured out was, when you're building this from scratch. You're figuring out everything. And trust me, we made mistakes along the way. The first batch of product that came out, disaster. Like we put it on the
Oh.
disaster spectrum, right? Um, and we learned real quick that it depends who you go to. And look, the guys are out of New Jersey, right? So everyone has a guy. We found a guy. But our bottling was not kind of cool at the beginning, so they didn't clean the lines from the day before. We went to this kind of shop and um, ended up having jalapeno liqueur flavored whiskey, which was not great for everybody. We
Oh
still have some of
man.
those bottles. It's great for cooking, but not great for drinking. Um, but literally, like we built everything from scratch. Danny built the bottling line. It's actually we still have it. It's driven by air. There's no mechanics to it. It's all air driven. And yeah, we just ground it out from the beginning. So yeah, just an insane time in the last few years. And as I said to you all at the beginning, it's like uh, you'll sleep about 3 hours a night because our R&D used to be, and still is, by the way. I'm quite surprised that phone hasn't started ringing with the boys. Um, we would do our R&D typically 11 p.m. through 3 a.m. in the morning. And in fact, things like the Architect were born through there, and we'll talk through some of those products. But we used to blend, we still do, by the way, like blend on the road. And to be very clear, since acquisition, Mike and Danny are in this business every day. In fact, everybody from the company is still here,
Wow. That's
which
great.
is pretty rare,
Yeah.
right? Because normally when you get these bigger acquisitions, it's like, oh, what happened to everybody? No, the guys are innovating faster than they have done, and there's a couple of things, and usually people ask the question, okay, so why did you do the acquisition? Why are you working with Luxco overall? I'll tell you the way I see it, and because I used to look at all the numbers and have to deal with that. Um, when you build a business like this, you have to bring in some folks that have some knowledge about the industry, right? So we actually got a financial modeler. They're actually based in Louisville. They understand how to build these whiskey models, and it was very helpful to us. It was unhelpful to us in some respects because we blew through the 5-year model in about 2.5 years.
Mm,
Now, how did that happen? Well, a couple of things. Be very transparent. That's what we always have been, always will be, never will change, and engage the consumer. Like, I think we've probably done more tastings than any other brand combined. I know because we currently still pay those bills and do all of those things. But, it was to bring people on the journey. Building a business is and being entrepreneurial in the US is not that. Bringing a great bunch of passionate people together that love, drinking bourbon and then turning around and blending it and creating products. So that model, we blew through pretty quickly. And a couple of things happen. One of them is when you buy products, so we're sourcing, right? So we're effectively internally sourced now, but from Midwest grain products. You only get so much. And in fact, when you're starting out, you're not buying, 8, 10, 15-year-old barrels, right?
mhm,
Our first product, just so everyone knows, the original 80 proof, it was a 2-year product. That's what we could afford. And the trick in it is how you use the blends. It's the corn, the wheat, the rye, and actually that multi-barley is a pretty slick element to take the graininess out of pours. But so we then had to figure out, all right, so you got these three barrel sources, there are certain ages, and just so you know, today the 80 proof is now at 4 years, and we're increasing that over time. Our barrel strength's got 7-year in it now. We've been doing some 10-year products, so we now have access to a little bit more aged product. But the really cool thing was what we figured out from what other brands were doing is they would have so many mash bills that they must have had to like blend continuously. And we were like, this is kind of weird way of doing it. Like we have a mash bill, we really love it, and it's a high corn mash bill and a 4 grain. So then it became proof, expression, and finish. So
mhm,
particularly everything we do comes off of the same original mash bill that we're using, just in a modified form. That worked for us because it allowed us to expand very quickly, but still give everybody a little bit of difference. So, architects sitting at 104, the barrel strength sitting at whatever proof they came at the barrel. Then we went on to do toasted and try and fix those allocation problems. So, yeah, we always just like to forge a path, and then finishing was becoming kind of an interesting topic, right? In probably, 20s, 2020, 21. Um, and we decided to like blow the taps off of it because if you're going to innovate and be really different, don't follow the crowd. Like everyone's going left, go right,
mhm,
go crazy. And actually, the first one in the Cooper series, and if you have those bottles, it says Cooper series on the bottom of our LTOs. That's actually Danny's son. So there's the sort
mm,
of second element of the family. We started with rosé cask.
mhm,
And I don't think today, I think there's maybe one brand that came close with sort of rosé water kind of feature on it. No one's done it. And here's why. Blending rosé wine barrels with bourbon effectively is real tough. It took us about 150 different samples of rosé wine to figure then out that product you had to have 100% Grenache. It doesn't work with anything else.
mm,
And then we had to figure out, well, was there anybody then barrel aging rosé wine? By the way, there's not many. There's probably about two or three. And these guys originally in southern France, where we get these from now, they didn't want to sell us the barrels. Like they were just not interested in it. But we did a little legwork on it. But that's when you have to figure out, like, when we do a lot of these finishes as well, like, when the Rio first came out, it was a small amount. Everyone's like, oh my God, I love it, but we need more. It we'd never done all these finishes. There's just but we weren't experts in it, right? We were having to figure out from the scratch, like how you even do these finishes. And I always tell everybody like second batch, third batch, we're kind of dialing in, and now like in Rio, we're really dialed in because we've got to that point. But it was the same in the original rosé cask. And then you've got to figure out with those is like, how do you fight the tannin? Because you don't want it like, oh, it's like bourbon, but now I've got this horrible winey finish to it.
Mm.
Like, you don't want to overpower it. So, we had to figure out bitter content, looking at tannin values, and then figuring out that wheat actually is a really good thing to counteract those sort of tannins in the wine casks. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and whatever questions you have, and I'm sure Ryan can jump in and help with some of these pours that I'm sure you're going to go through. But I'll happily share a little of our roadmap because I have three special pours heroes I'm going to share with you as well. So just get a
Awesome.
little fun at the end. So sorry if
Yeah.
that was droning on a little bit, but hopefully that gives you kind of like a little of the history for
No,
so.
that's great. I think it's always nice to know the background story. And I mean, that's the great thing about bourbon. It's always hanging out with friends and telling stories and having a good drink. So thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
But
we're still really good at doing that, by the
yeah. Well,
way.
let's have a drink then.
Hell
So
yeah.
all right. So Ryan, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the list that we have here, and I just want to make sure that I double check again, being kind of the 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 stand-in. So we have
The
Penelope wheated,
reliever.
right? So we have the wheated, the toasted rye, the toasted marshmallow, or the marshmallow toast, Penelope Rio, and the American Light. So we'll start off with
That sounds
Yeah,
right. Correct,
yeah.
Todd?
okay,
We're starting with the weeded, and then second is the toasted marshmallow. Third
Rye
is
perfect.
the
was number
Rio.
three.
No,
Oh,
third is the Rio.
okay.
Four is the rye, and five is the American.
Okay, well that's easy. So then we'll just start right off with the weeded. So this is a weeded expression. All right. You're gonna find weeded probably nationwide in the next upcoming couple of months. Granted, it's shipping out, so most people are going to be able to start to grab this. This is a fun expression. This is just a fun time. This was primarily fun story in the background. Matt could probably talk about it a little bit more, but this was primarily blended to kind of be a cocktail bourbon. And the cool thing about it is that it's great both in a cocktail and neat. So that should hopefully be poured out for you guys. A little bit on this one. This is 74% corn, uh, 16% wheat, 7% rye, and then that 3% malted barley. So, unlike some of the other wheateds that you're going to be more accustomed to, I'll just name ours, a Rebel, right? You'll notice that the Rebel and some other wheateds that are out there are heavy, right? They have that heat, that spice to it. This is not that. This is going to be something a little bit lighter. That's delicate, creamy, and you could also get that vanilla punch right in there. So coming
Absolutely.
in at 95 proof, you'll see it's a fantastic sipping bourbon. But again, it also holds up very well in your standard cocktails that you're going to make with a bourbon. So if you're a fan of old fashions, I would dare to say, give it a go.
Mm.
One of the things that I would love to try it in, and I still haven't to this day because I just ran out of like the Italian Amaro, is a paper plane.
Hmm.
So if you get an opportunity to make a paper plane with this, please let me know before I do.
Okay.
Because I really, really want to try one.
It's a great cocktail.
So
Right? Oh,
the fun thing about this weeded is that's taken us probably a year and a half, 2 years to bring to market, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. To get that product to that price point, you need immense volume of being able to get hold of these barrels. And by the way,
Mm.
weeded barrels are extremely hard to get hold of right now. Like it's like the one of the hardest, like it goes in cycles. Sometimes you have issues with getting corn, but right now weeded barrels are like the hot ticket. So we
Is it
wanted to
just
do
the
this for folks.
demand for the wheat?
Oh, just for demand. Yeah, like
Okay.
the demand's through the roof on weeded product. And also it's not a mash bill like folks run so much. It's it's bizarrely, it's one of the ones that they run the least. And you got to wait time, obviously. You need an age in there. So we actually want to do this for a long time, and we wanted to make sure we filled a proofing gap because we had 80, we had 104, we wanted something within that space. But honestly, like to Ryan's point, there's a there's a space for the 80. I mean, it's a simple sipper and it's great. It makes cocktails, but this one just adds a little bit more of a different dimension. And actually, to be honest, allows us to go both on and off premise with that particular product. But yeah, we want to do it for a long time and dialing in. See, one of the things with these proofs is if you when you start going lower down in the proof levels and then playing with full grains, it gets a little trickier sometimes in this blending. Um, and wheat's volatile. It's a very volatile grain when you blend. So it's the one that wants to fight everything. That's kind of how I describe it. Um, so these are tricky. But there's a whole ethos, and Ryan knows this as much as anybody is like, if it's not right, we're not putting it out.
Hmm.
So that's why it's kind of hitting really well for a lot of folks because it does have that like citrus note, and I love it. It's a great product.
I think you pointed out the texture. It's real creamy and stuff, which is interesting for a lower proof bourbon. It usually doesn't have that texture on a lower proof bourbon. So this is outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
Oh, it
one
is really
thing that I
good.
really enjoy about that one is that's what blew me away originally when trying this out for the first time was the fact that it is, like you just said, it's a 95 proof. It's unbelievably creamy on the palate and it sticks. So it's not something that's light, it's not something that's thin.
Hmm.
It has a nice viscosity, especially in the palate. So I really haven't heard any bad things about the weeded in the markets, and we travel a lot. We taste this out a lot. I just got done with a 4-hour tasting here in Baltimore. And experienced bourbon drinkers like it just as much as the new bourbon drinkers.
You were
So
working today?
what's up?
You're actually working today?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I gotta troll you every time we're on a
I
call.
work every day. No, I just sit around and drink whiskey all the time, guys. That's my job. That's what they pay me to do.
I love it.
But
I love
no,
it.
it's again, it's one of those things. And like we were saying over here, share with the tasting notes. Share the things tonight in the chat.
Yeah,
Let
it's
us
in
know
there.
what you're getting from it. There are no wrong answers. I think that's one of the biggest stigmas when it comes to tasting bourbons, right? Or tasting whiskeys in general, is you're going to have a bunch of people that are like, I, it's weird, but I taste like Smarties candies on this. And we're like, great, then that's what you're getting. Some other people go, I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't even make any sense. It's like, because you're not tasting that. Taste is subjective. And we understand that, especially at Penelope. And like Matt will say multiple times, the majority of us that work here, we have a passion for the spirit, not just for like some companies making money. We're here because we really enjoy bourbon. We really enjoy whiskey in general. And on top of that, we really enjoy having fun playing and experimenting with stuff. So
I
this
like
is
your
one of those
point. I
fun
like
little
your
things.
point on the tasting note aspect. That's one thing that we've learned is the more you kind of sit down and talk like this is what I'm tasting, we've all kind of refined each other's palates and talk about what are we getting, and you start to learn more. People, I think, are a lot of people are intimidated to say what I'm tasting because they don't want to be wrong. But I think that's how you develop the vocabulary and that palate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's really no wrong answers. I
None.
mean, give you an idea, like when we're tasting through stuff, Danny's got an idea. And by the way, just so everyone gets a level set, Danny actually blends in numbers.
Mm,
So we all taste with our profiles. He actually blends two numbers. So when he's done his number blends and where he thinks he wants to be, he'll then throw it out to me, Ryan, Mike, everybody in the team, and then he'll get our feedback. And now he's wanting that different dynamic from everyone's palate. So we're all going to be different. We all taste in a different way. And again, time of day is also going to affect like exactly what your palate is producing, what you've eaten, what you've been
hmm.
doing. So late at night. We've all been through the day, so we are going to get some different notes potentially. But yeah, no, there's just no wrong answer. It's just how you're interpreting it. Like I'll share with you later a pour that's coming out, and the description I'll give you, most people will go, "What?" But it's how my brain interprets to the situation that, I think it fits,
Excellent.
There was a cool question earlier. I'm just looking at some of the questions through here. Someone asked about do we experiment, basically do we experiment, 53 or any different sizes? So the answer actually is yes. When we do some of the wine finishes, those barrels can vary because, and the perfect one is the Hungarian Tokai or Tokai. I actually got corrected by someone who's Hungarian. They're like, no, it's Tokai. I was like, okay, cool. Still don't know how to say it properly. Um, but yeah, those barrels are really interesting. They vary in size. They're extremely old. When we get them, we had to reject some of them. They were just too cracked, too old. You can't sweat them back. And actually, with some of these wine finishes, what we also learned with the Tokai was you have to get them from the same producer. There's a lot of
Mm.
variability in that says sweet grape wine, which translates to rotten grape. Um, it is a sweet wine, and there's too much variability in that grape source. So when you start putting that with the different size barrels, so in I think the first run we ever did of that product, we had different literages, different sizes, different ages, and then we had to dial it in because we were realizing that there was a lot of variability when we put a 21 rye bourbon in there. So yeah, we play around with different things. In fact, Danny, this last week he's looking at some different cask finishes, different barrel sources for next year, and going very wide, worldwide, I would say at this point. Kind of we're on this like weird mission right now to find like weird barrels,
Mm.
different wood sources and stuff like that, and some of them are really hard to find. Like you've really got to. We're lucky. So the people who own the cooperages who actually make the barrels, the American oak barrels, right, for the bourbon, they have subdivisions of their businesses. So we're very lucky that one of our main suppliers actually has a division inside their cooperage business that will go and source everything from all over the world. So we're lucky in that respect and got good relationship with them. So yeah, we get these weird phone calls. It's like, hey, we got space on our container. Do you want to put some cool barrels on it? And we're cool. Yeah, let's go. Throw some juice in it.
Nice.
But
All
yeah,
right.
like yeah, so for sure.
We
What
just
else
have to
we
we have
tasted?
to
We got a lot to
interrupt.
get through.
We have to interrupt Matt and just be like, okay, we're moving on to the next thing.
No, I'm sorry. I will carry on.
All right. So number two, what is this one again?
This is the Rio, correct?
No, I don't
No,
believe it
this is the
was.
marshmallow toast.
Yes.
Marshmallow Toast is
Oh,
number two. Okay. I looked at a picture and I'm like, okay, the Rio's
it's
the marshmallow.
not just a label, okay? I
And
want
this
to be
was
very
this
clear
was
about
just so
that.
you know, this was Ian and Corey's decision how we should taste. So
The
Oh,
recommendation.
perfect.
Gotcha, gotcha. All
I love
right.
it.
So
So
this is
all
the fun
complaints go
thing.
to Ian.
Brilliant.
Don't worry, we can do that all day
We can
long.
do that all
Okay.
day long.
We do it like it's our day job, literally. So marshmallow toast. This is going to be our toasted lineup, but there's going to be slight differences from what you're going to see in like the standard pour that you can go to the local store and pick up, right? This one, I believe you still have the Char 3 heavy, and we're coming in at 110 proof on this one. So I don't I this is the thing about marshmallow toast, which is really fun. Kind of the story, and Matt has the story on this because I was not around for this one. But the cool thing about this is it's likened to sitting in front of a fire.
Yeah.
So don't let the marshmallow toast name give you any preconceived notions. However, um, this is something special that I haven't even gotten a bottle of yet. It is a delicious pour because it's you're taking all of the wonderful fundamentals, the three grain mash bill, the 74%, 21%, or 74 corn, 21 rye, and you're adding it to those toasted barrels to create something a little bit more special than what it was before, right? This one, though, being at a higher proof, having that different of a char level of that three, you kind of take on kind of like a fireside marshmallowy feel to it, right? You're sitting,
Yeah.
imagine that. You're sitting around a fire. It's 60 degrees outside. It's not 83 like it always is in Florida nights. And you're just enjoying a good pour. That's where this kind of all sparks from. And I'll let
So
Matt kind of tell that fun story.
there's an interesting comment here, Garrett. Balanced toast, not overdone, and that is spot on for a couple of reasons. So when we do our toasted product, you there are three grains actually in those. There are actually 21 rye that we use, varying different ages. They usually start at minimum four, and then we'll blend. What can happen is, and here's the trick of why these different releases come out. So we've actually done one in Architect. It's called Creme Brulee. Um, we actually go back to the source of the barrels for a lot of this. So these particular ones are not our normal toasted char and toasted barrels that we use for the marshmallow toast. It is actually its own separated set. What actually came out of this is that typically we'll either use Speyside, Ohio oak, or a couple of sources out of Kentucky. So either ISC or Kelvin is the other source for these toasted barrels. Interestingly, we started experimenting with things like the McGinnis cooperage out of Missouri, and it's actually quite incredible. Like the process of char and toast, they are two different processes on the barrels. Um, Toasting the process is very much like putting a pork butt into a smoker a longer period of time. It's really breaking apart a deeper part of the stave and the cellulose within the stave. That wood type, obviously being, still American oak, but coming from different basically ground and tree sources, actually has a predominantly profound effect on how it will react at different times of the year, by the way, when you're actually dropping these barrels. So you have a lot of influences that play on the actual physically blended bourbon that goes in these barrels. So one, wood source, two, time of year. And actually that's how we kind of play around with the chars. So we run most probably the chars ones through threes. We'll actually run those in the colder months. We want those to go a little longer. But we actually run the fours and fives typically in the summer months because you want the yeast to go a little faster. The heavier toast, you don't want to overrun it too much. Otherwise, it's just very bitter and it won't work. So I always say to everybody, because I do me and Ryan on the streets a lot, and people are like, oh, you just threw a label on it. No, actually, we didn't. This is a separated set of barrels to get that flavor profile. So the architect version of it uses French oak stave, and we very specially selected it's basically toasted French staves that we put in the tanks for those to give the impression of this sort of creme brulee, burnt sugar toast, feel to it. So
Hmm. So
Hey,
Matt, I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
is the Corey on the call on the
Ian's
Zoom?
popped in, but I haven't seen
Ian's
Corey.
here, yeah.
Oh, because a question for Corey, Ian, maybe you could help. How come California didn't get any of this? Anybody?
Uh, there was
Anybody?
some in California, but very limited amounts. It's a very limited batch,
I only
and
got one bottle. I mean, come on.
you got one more than I did.
yeah, same with me.
Same, I didn't get any.
Yeah,
Didn't get me.
I haven't gotten one. I've tried it. It's delicious, but I haven't gotten any. So, it California is a relatively newer market for Penelope. It's not considered a quote unquote legacy market. And it's growing very well. But yeah, that's correct. Washington doesn't get a ton of it, but it is up there. QFC has it up in Washington, or they did have it. I doubt it's still in stock up there. But as the market develops and as they create more of these batches and there's more stock for us to get, more will come. but there was some in California. But by the time it spreads across the country, everyone takes their cut. Missouri gets some, Texas gets some, Nevada gets a little bit, and everyone. And California is an important market, and we did get some cases in. They were available. Most of them were, retailers would take them in, or they'd know that they were getting them and they'd pre-sell. So they were gone before they even hit on the shelf. So, that's something to also, as you have, local retailers that you love that are Penelope supporters, usually they get tapped to say, hey, this is coming in, and you'll get a notice that there's a pre-sale coming your way and you can pick one up. But there'll be more of these batches coming, and there'll be more stock and more larger batches and more availability in California as time moves on.
I remember when we used to get really excited that we sold 300 cases.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
That was like an incredible win. And now, like, I think it is, as you're growing, we're having to always continue to look at like how big these size of the batches are. The challenge with when you do things like the toasted marshmallow is you can't actually make them too big because honestly, there's just only so many barrels that are going to have that profile. Because give you an idea, when we go into a project like that, we're forward ordering those barrels with that type of char that we're looking for and that type of bit of wood. So you basically have a capacity, right? Your capacity is your barrel type. In other things, capacity could be age of juice, it could be the availability of juice. Like the when we get to like the 17-year light whiskeys as an example, which I think you guys have got a pour of, um, it's 17 years old, and some of those barrels come to us completely dry. Some come with like 20% of juice on. So the yield is very much an unknown for us. And again, there's only so many of those barrels that exist. So it's always a tough one for us because it's like, well, what do you do with the juice? So we've had some interesting situations like the estate collection last year was a perfect one. Like there's enough to kind of put something out there, but you're never going to satisfy everybody. But the dilemma is like, am I going to take a 10-year wheat and just blend that into a big batch just to make sure that like the country could see something? It's a tough one. Sure, we could do it. But then, we have debates internally, like Ian's on them, Ryan's on them with Mike and Danny and everybody. And it's like, we just sometimes feel like, it's a shame to do that to such exceptional juice. And that's why we'll put things out that maybe have a little bit of a lower yield on it. But equally, like the estate collection 10 years, I mean, we bought those when they were 7 years old. And I can tell you, it's real tough holding on to barrels that, by the way, cost over 40 grand to buy back, when they
Wow.
were seven. When you literally are burning every dollar back into the business with the margins that you're creating, it's tough to hold on to that. And we stuck it out. In fact, fun fact about those barrels, Danny bought them and then turned around to Mike when we were in an Airbnb in Kentucky and went, "Hey, Mike, I might have bought some barrels." And then Mike's like, "Oh, how much are those barrels?" They're like 30, 40 grand. And like Mike's like, well, we don't have the money in the bank account for that. So Mike actually had to go to his brother to get a loan for those barrels. So yeah, a long way of saying it, but like sometimes, yeah, I wish we could have an infinite like supply of doing some of these things, and we're getting better. I will say that. So we'll talk about some of the roadmap at the end of this, and you'll see that it's going to get a little better for everybody. So
All
what's the
right.
next
Well,
one?
number three is that our rye or is that the Rio?
Number three is the Rio.
All right.
Rio going on there. I don't know if Ian's here, if he wants to take over, but I mean, I'm down to keep going.
I think
Uh,
he's already given you his whole paycheck, so yeah, no.
yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
here you go.
Ryan, you can keep the flow going if I have
No,
any
this
if I have any moments of interesting information, I can share
Yeah,
them all.
jump in.
Yeah.
So this is the cool thing about Rio, this batch for 2025. The cool thing about the Cooper series is that, you know, Mike, Danny, and everybody at Penelope, we listen. We listen to what everybody's saying out there,
Mhm.
right? We hear the it's too sweet, it's not sweet enough, it's too spiced. We want it to be more balanced. This is Danny taking that information and trying to blend to the best of his ability and trying to finish to the best of his ability of what people are asking for. And 2025's version of Rio, in our opinion, is a great balancing act between the spice, the sweet, and the bourbon notes that you're all looking for. So this is what we're taking our wheated mash bill, as you guys have already tasted and through. And we are finishing that in Brazilian Amberana cask, which is also known as Brazilian oak. And we're finishing it secondly in a second cask of honey. So
Mm.
those two blended together, you get exactly what people are saying right there in the chat. So you get that cinnamon toast crunch, snickerdoodle on Rio. I like that
Ooh.
one. I like the snickerdoodle. And the real cool
That's
thing
nice.
that actually, this is a fun little story. Matt and I popped the bottle together, and we
Mm.
realized that if you do end up finding a bottle of this and you just let it rest in your glass for about 5 to 10 minutes,
Yeah.
it becomes so much better than just initial pop, pour, and taste. Um, so this is one of my favorites out of the lineup. I mean, I'm a fan of all the series of Rio from batch one all the way to this year's batch. But this year's batch is definitely, in my opinion at least, probably one of the tops.
Yeah.
It works
So,
great on ice cream, by the way.
Coconut. I
mm,
like the coconut comment. See, Matt said coconut to me on the
Yeah,
first time we tasted it.
I get coconut off of it for sure.
Yes, coconut's a good one. And of course, again, this is going to be an LTO. This is going to be one of those limited time offerings. So I know we're going to hear every single day for the rest of our lives, especially Matt in his Instagram DM. So I always feel bad for him. But Rio is slowly going, around the nation. Um, More than likely, you've seen it already kind of hit retail.
We
Yeah.
got a lot in California this year.
Nice.
See,
Good.
you got a good amount. I love
Yeah. All right. So you got Rio, you didn't get Marshmallow Toast. Come on.
it.
Even
Can you even
trade-off,
it out,
guys.
You got some
please?
markets that didn't get it for sure. So,
Ian, we'll complain. Come on.
I know you will.
I'll wait till later.
So,
Hey, so real quick question
yeah,
though. The name Rio makes a lot of sense for this, um, being
Yeah.
Brazilian and everything, but the marshmallow finish, or sorry, what was it called? It was toasted marshmallow.
Yes.
Mhm.
Was that named before you created it, or when you came out, you tasted it, you're like, oh,
No,
that's
it
what we're
was
calling it?
after Danny actually named it. It was just honestly he was doing proof sampling to get the proof right, and he was just like, oh, I could just imagine myself toasting marshmallows at a campfire. This is like t toasted marshmallow. That was pretty much it.
Yes. And
so
sorry, somebody asked proof, 98 proof.
yeah. Something kind of cool about the Cooper series in general that I really love, and the Penelope Cooper series, with the exception of the Tokai, which is a 95.5 rye, the modulation that we're able to do with the 4 grain blend is really where I think the magic happens. Moving slight amounts of the blend up and down, moving proofs up and down, playing with age, playing with finish shows like Danny has found a pocket with this blend where it takes finishes incredibly well, and he's able to modulate the mash bill age and proof to kind of make sure that it takes that finish perfectly. And like Ryan was saying, he's always taking feedback in, but that 4 grain, that base that he uses for the majority of the Cooper series is such a unique mash bill because if you taste these side by side, they really take on the finish really well, but they don't necessarily, it doesn't lose its character, but it also changes its character based on the finish. So I always kind of marvel at our Cooper series and how Danny's able to take that 4 grain, move it around slightly, play with the proof, play with the age, play with the finish, and give you completely different products that you wouldn't think might be the same mash bill. Same with our toasted product, which is our 21% rye mash bill. You try that next, you try the toasted, our standard toasted next to our architect, same mash bill, roughly the same age, roughly the same proof, completely different products. And that's the power of
Mhm.
the blend and the finish. So I just think that's a really cool example of what Danny's able to do with a really amazing LTO. I mean, Rio's the thing that I think even before I was with Penelope, that was the thing that people were like going nuts about. I think it really kind of helped
They
elevate.
still are.
Yeah, I
I
know.
get 300 DMs a day pretty
Yeah, I
much on
know.
that thing.
But that was the thing, I knew of Penelope before, but when Rio came out, that was when people were like, "Hey, I saw that bottle of Penelope you had at your house. Do you have the Rio one?" And I was like, "No, I can't find it in California. I have to source it elsewhere." But that was the one where people started being like, "Whoa, this is a really unique and interesting way to go about finish whiskey, right?"
Well,
Um,
the history of Rio, just so we're all clear, it was actually going to be two individual products. So originally it was going to be a straight honey bourbon, and we were going to do an Umbrana finished bourbon. And we tasted through it, and there was nothing wrong with the two products that we've come up with. And honestly, we were on a call one night, and Mike's like, I don't know if this really like is us. Like it's good, but it's just not who we are in the Cooper series. So honestly, Mike's like, Hail Mary it, Danny. Let's go see if these two things will blend together. And yeah, we started putting it together, and it was pretty cool. I'll tell you right now, like I don't think it's a pour for everybody. It's going to be extremely sweet. For me, it's dessert. I put it on ice cream. I love it.
Yep.
And I love the pour, but it's just a little something different for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. That was this is one that everyone's looking out for. So thanks for sharing with us and letting us try it all. So that's great.
Absolutely.
What's the next one?
Number
Toasted rye.
4 is our
Did I
Oh,
rye.
hear right?
Yeah, toasted
toasted
rye.
rye.
that's
I got
a
it right.
double
That's all I care
gold
about. Everything
winning
else I could be
best of
wrong.
class.
Now I'm happy. So
Well,
go.
you go through that, and then I'll tell everyone the actual reason why we came out with toasted rye in the first place. How about
All right.
Fine.
that?
I wanted to hear the story first. All right. So
I
toasted rye is
can.
really fun.
If you want me to, I can.
So here's the deal with toasted rye. See how I just ignore me, everybody?
I know.
So the toasted rye is a really fun expression. This is the one thing that we've had a few in the past. We've had a
Mhm.
few different mash bills on this toasted rye. What we've landed on is a 95.5 toasted uh, at 100 proof. So it's very similar to like our toasted bourbon at 100 proof. But what you're going to find on this is that it's not the atypical rye note that you're going to get from this. What a lot of people come to me and say is there's a lot of brown sugar on this, which I absolutely adore, just in the sheer fact that most people that hate rye try our toasted rye and absolutely enjoy it more so than some of the bourbons that they've tried in the
And
past.
this is where we would introduce you to our friend Bob.
Uh,
Bob loves rye. I don't believe
I like rye.
him.
so many people are like, I despise rye. And I'm like, okay, try a couple of these other ryes for me. The toasted rye I always land on because it comes across more with bourbon notes than you would find than the traditional rye, like to be honest. But I would love to hear what y'all have to say about it. And then I will hand it over to Matt to kind of give you a little bit more on that.
So the toasted rye came about, you know, we were originally like gonna try and like think about doing a straight rye product. As to Ryan's point, it can be polarizing for some folks. And again, you gotta like when you're growing a business, you gotta figure out like where your consumer's at with the journey that you have. And yes, rye is a component part of a lot of the blends that we do. But we had to make a conscious decision. What was the consumer who's coming on our journey totally ready for a straight ride from us, which would have been 95.5, by the way, because it's what MGP's, staple is.
Standard. Yeah.
And at that time, it was like, yeah, I don't think we're quite there for this. So the original toasted rice, if you can find them, it's actually a slightly different label. It's still what we, by the way, they're short labels. We call them the bikini labels. Um, it's got a slightly darker green note to it with batch one. It's actually a very unique mash bill. They're effectively 90 straight rye, 10 malted. Um, so obviously a little different for 95.5. They don't make that mash bill anymore. It kind of gums up the machines too much when they're doing the grinding and the fermentation and all the distillation. But fun thing was, we came across these barrels, and that 9010 actually was a barrel swap. So one of the things about the industry is like, oh, everyone's competitive. Well, yeah, we're all competitive, but actually, quite a lot of the distilleries are pretty friendly to one another, and you have good working relationships. Bizarrely, when we got started, just to give you an idea, you could buy two barrels, get one free. Like it was kind of like a BOGO. That doesn't exist anymore, by the way, after the pandemic. Um, but our good friends up at Whistlepig, they were trying to get a project off the ground, and through our cooperage partner, they asked us if they could purchase some of the spare barrels that we had. And being true wheeler dealers, we're like, sure, what do you got? And they were like, well, actually, we've got this really cool MGP. We know you're sourced by them, and they obviously, lots of people buy MGP. Um, yeah, and the original toasted rye actually was actually aged in upstate New York, so it had this like beautiful earthy funk to it. It actually set us off down a path, and it's why the toasted rye has remained, is that we now look for those more earthier notes from the rye, a little bit more of the floral notes that come out in them. And it was our way of introducing people, as to Ryan's point, to a rye in a little bit more of a subtle fashion where you could get a bit of a sweeter note out of it. And it just won this year double gold, and it's up for best of class as well. So.
That's awesome. I think it's a really interesting rye because when you smell it, it smells pretty classic rye to me, but the taste is very different from classic rye, softer, more
Yeah.
sugars. Really interesting. Going back to Ryan mentioned earlier about cocktails. What would you do with this one?
Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
So here's the deal, though. Cocktails are going to be subjective as well. When I think of a Manhattan, I want something that's deeper, richer,
Hmm.
something different than my old fashions. I love a rye old fashioned, but I like a candied rye old fashioned. So something lighter but spicier. This one, I want it to be darker, richer, deeper. And this for a Manhattan would go so well, especially because at 100 proof, you're not going to overly water it down.
Hmm. Okay.
So somebody
Awesome.
try it, let me know.
Okay.
Jay, to your point, last year at the Spirits Festival, this was the one that did really, really well for us at our booth. We poured the
Hmm.
most out of this one. I think Bob drank most of it. But I call this one the inverted rye because to everything that Matt and Ryan were saying, on the nose, smells kind of like a rye with some nice caramel notes to it. And you taste it, and normally for me, most rye is very top note, right? It's very front of palate, it's very big, it's floral, it's sweet, it's perfumey. But this one kind of is really mellow at the front for a rye, especially, and then it kind of
Yeah.
builds and ramps you up in the back of your palate and gives you
Hmm.
that rye and that sweetness, and then the toast kind of comes in as well. So it's really, really, I mean, I'm a rye lover. I love the 95.5. I really like the first edition that we made, which is super funky. To Matt's point, that 100% rye, the 9010, the malted rye in it is an incredibly funky pour. If you do find it sitting on a shelf, pick it up. It's really, really good. Very unique and very different than this product. That one was a 5-year-old. This one's slightly older at 6 years old and a different mash bill.
All
Yeah, I'm
right.
looking forward to turn that one around. Oh,
So our fifth pour is the 17-year light whiskey, right?
That's a finisher. That's a finisher.
And Ian and I were already talking about this one yesterday, I think. I'm like, so many interesting things about this. I don't know how familiar all of our followers are about light whiskey, but can you please tell us about it?
Oh yeah. You want to know about what is American light whiskey
I
first?
I think let's start there. I think that's a good,
Excellent.
yeah.
I love that. This is my moment to shine as an educator in whiskey, okay? So American light whiskey for a lot of people that are like, what is American light whiskey? Well, back in like the 60s and 70s, when whiskey was literally taking kind of a downturn to things like clear spirits, vodkas, gins, rums, especially like the silvers, the whiskey industry came together and they were like, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to compete with stuff like this? And they thought to themselves, well, if we could make a traditional whiskey mash bill, but make it over 160 proof, under 190, and then we could probably mix this into some cocktails. So a lot of people out there would assume like a white dog,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, a new make whiskey. So they were trying to put this out there as a new cocktail maker for the world to enjoy and try to take back some of that market share that they're losing out on with vodkas and gins and rums and all that jazz. Well, luckily for us, 17, 20, 30 years later, it didn't work out all that well. So they put them in barrels and kept them off to the side. Now, the regulation for this is literally American light whiskey has to be over 160 proof, under 190 proof. It can be matured in a used charred oak barrel or a new uncharred oak barrel. All right. And the cool thing about our American light whiskey that you're going to see is that it is the highest corn content. We're looking at 99.1
Wow.
and 17 years in a used charred oak. All right. So this was distilled from the Seagram's distillery back in like 2008. All right. MGP, also known as Ross and Squibb. So I believe, without trying to look it up or anything, we're at 138.8. That's correct. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here. We don't talk a lot about American light whiskeys. Um, but the coolest thing about American light whiskeys, especially with that age on it, and because it is a secondary barrel, it is a second fill barrel. It is not a first fill. You're going to see some really outstanding flavors coming from this, especially at almost 140 proof. You're going to notice that I don't think anybody has ever told me, oh, this tastes all of 138 proof. It kind of comes in more around that 110, 115 on the palate. Just don't drink too much of it, or you're going to find out what 100, almost 140 proof feels like. But this, we get a lot of like vanilla cream. You get
Hmm.
that cinnamon in there. Um, Really, honestly, I love to find out what people have to say about this. And somebody asked earlier, since we're on this topic of American light whiskey, um, what is the highest proof that Penelope does? They had a few of the American light whiskey picks go out, and it was, I think the highest one was 144.
Hmm.
So that would probably be the top, a nice hazmat American light whiskey. Um,
The name
what a lot
seems
of
so
people,
contradictory.
right? It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense, right? Well, that light doesn't necessarily mean it's going
Proof.
to be
You
less
can you
proof.
can light it on fire.
You can, it's lighter in I guess visual, because if
Yeah.
you looked at it
Yeah.
back in the day, they wanted it to be clear. They wanted it to be light. They didn't want it to be dark brown copper. We're only lucky now because nobody bought it, right? And 90% of the people that actually get their hands on light whiskey, fun little fact, I like to make up percentages, but a good majority of the percentage of American light whiskey that's in the market today is actually blended within the American whiskey world.
Hmm.
So the fact that you have a good 17-year American light whiskey really speaks volumes, right? And I'm sure hopefully some of you guys were able to get 13-year, 15-year, the 17-year. I would always say try them up against each other, see which one you like more. But the older they get, the better they get. It's really wild. They rarely get over oaked because again, second fill or brand new oak barrels. So yeah, let us know what you think, and I'll kind of pass it off and stop
Yeah.
rambling.
This one for all you Scotch and Irish whiskey lovers, the process and how this is created is not dissimilar to that. So you're getting sort of an American version of how this would be created, coming off of the still and being put into a barrel at a very high proof. It goes into the barrel at much higher proof as well, which is why the proof is so much higher than traditional bourbon. Um, so it's kind of a very American product. And to Ryan's point in the early history of this, like once they made a lot of the distillers that made this, the plan to kind of like make this stuff and try to market it, they were literally like dumping it into the sewer because no one wanted it. Like this was
Hmm.
not something that they had too much of it. They overproduced. They were trying to sell it as kind of this unique product. Then they started putting it into like blends like Kessler's and these kind of like American blended whiskeys, but they had a glut of it. And we were fortunate enough to find these even after that wave of just, hey, let's make some light whiskey. And they just kind of left it at the Seagram's facility, which was then taken over by MGP. So very unique product, very American. But what I would recommend is if you can find like an aged unpeated Scotch, like an independent barrel, independent like a signatory of like a Space Cider, and try that next to the light whiskey. So one's 99 one corn, one's obviously 100% malted barley, roughly the same proof. You can find an old one and try them next to each other, especially if it's like a second fill bourbon barrel to see the differences in how these are coming off of the still. One's more than likely pot still. One's obviously coming off of a column. One's American. One's aged in Scotland. It's kind of a cool thing, but very similar processes. So that's one of the things that once I got the light whiskey, I started looking through my collection. I'm like, I want to try like an Auchentoshan or something to see what it's like. Like one of my. So I was like digging through bottles. I found one and tried it, and it was really cool. A and B.
Nice. So there's been a couple of good questions that have popped up over here. Um, Being such a high proof barrel entry, is there a larger angel share, or is
Yeah.
it just the same
No,
17 years you're losing a lot?
you're losing a lot.
Yeah.
I put in the comment there, like some of these are empty, some are 20%, maybe some are 40, 50%. They're all going to vary. They're certainly not full, I'll tell you that. I wish they were.
But it's pretty similar to a barrel entry of 125 or lower.
Yeah, so it's going to be fairly similar, but actually one of the things that has made those barrels survive and honestly have the profile they have and not have so much oak influence is most of those barrels are kept in the sub basement.
Mm,
So that's typically how they're surviving the longest.
okay.
In fact, the ones that you're drinking on are effectively below water level because the sub basement at MGP in that particular rick house is actually below the water line.
Hmm.
It's very dark and damp and wet down there.
You can definitely taste the age on this. It's very interesting.
That's the one thing that I love. So when it comes to whiskeys, and I think Ian might back me up on this, truthfully, what Matt says doesn't affect me. But um, the cool thing about the age statement on these, you get that age dusty funkiness to it,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? It's fantastic. And with most American light whiskeys that are out there from other people, um, you're not getting that, right? And this is the cool thing when it comes to Mike and Danny and the tasting panels that we use at Penelope is that they really enjoy kind of hearing what everybody has to say and going with what kind of the general consensus will be. Um,
Yeah.
Granted, they get the overall, this is what we're going with, but they love to make sure that it's going to be something that everybody's going to enjoy. And I
Hmm.
don't think I've heard a single person say anything terrible about the American light whiskey as well. So,
The
I agree.
so
Go ahead.
give you an idea, these are actually quite hard to get hold of. Even though they for some of these sit in MGP's warehouse, they're actually owned by other people. So there's two main folks, very large distillery companies that actually own predominantly, I would say, well over 60% of the light whiskey stocks that exist today. And actually, light whiskey is used as filler for other products. They actually do
Mm.
proof down and it's used as filler basically because it's a corn content product. So, I know of barrels that were of significant age that were then proofed and thrown into things like RTDs, which is like, makes me cry a little bit, but
Yeah, it does.
they own them, and trying to get them is actually it's tough. You have to do quite a bit of negotiation to get them, and They've become kind of a weird commodity. To Ian's point earlier, there's people didn't want it in the 80s. It was like, what is this stuff? So yeah, for sure, it's a little tough. But I was going to share something with you guys because you kind of went through some bourbon, some rye, a little like whiskey. So the thing that I've been sipping on is actually the tank sample of the cigar batch series one that's coming out.
Nice.
Um,
Matt just
the
he likes to
101.
brag to everyone that
Great,
he
great
has this.
flex, Matt. We
Well, it
really
is a flex,
appreciate
but it,
that
it
flex.
goes with this whole thing that we've tasted through quite a few expressions because that's going to come at 101. And it's actually a blend of American whiskeys. So you're gonna have rye bourbon in there. You're gonna have the American Light that you just tasted is in there, and American Single Malt is in that particular pour as well. So it'll actually be the first significant product that we've come out where we've put American Single Malt into a Penelope bottle.
And I want to thank Ian for putting you on the group chat, so I have your phone number now. So we'll get this solved.
I can tell you that
Hey,
this pour was developed. It's an incredible story. Look, cigar batches, there's a few out there, right? You got the Magnus one, and you got Rye 3, and a few others that have done cigar batch products. There's no real definition to honestly what it is. Everyone has like a different opinion of how they create it, what it should be. Um, it's funny that we had this discussion last night on a live as well, and it was like definitely some people have preconceived ideas of the mash bills that should be in there. Should it be five mash bills or three or two? So we kind of went a different path on this, folks. Um, this started off with a good friend of the brand who's very into cigars, and we had a lot of late night calls. It was a hot thing. We're like, I don't know if we can do this justice with us just trying to, mock a blend that someone would enjoy with a cigar. It's just not us. So we went a little extreme. We were having phone calls with these master tobacconists that live in Nicaragua, which, by the way, is kind of it's kind of tough because they were losing power in half of the calls we were trying to do, and internet was kind of a little bit rough. But we teamed up with some really cool craft brands that actually wanted to come together. This is actually multiple brands that we've worked with, which is a little unusual, but they've actually all been very good in this way. A year ago, we went to the PCA in Las Vegas, and we held a very secret R&D blending session. It was about 8 hours long. It's a long session, a lot of cigars. But this one has been designed to pair with a medium cigar. Again, series should give you a clue. This won't be the first or the last. So, but the master tobacconist, and what's really interesting about the philosophy here of why we did it this way, we had them do the blend, not us. So we're there
mm,
obviously guiding them, but they actually blending against a number of their cigars, and they were explaining to us just how similar the process is between the distillation and fermentation of bourbon is to actually how they do cigars. There is fermentation, there is drying, there is seasoning, a lot of different things that go on. So we're really stoked by it because it's not just us. It's people who actually make cigars. It's actually, their world, their palates have created this. And that pour in the tank sample is exactly as I remembered and when we blended it in Las Vegas. I stood up in front of everybody and said, "You know what? I think I'm sucking down an orchard of apples, pears, oranges after a rainstorm when you get that earthy note where you smell the earth
mm,
in,
mhm.
in a sort of like a big orchard."
Called
That's what
petrichor.
that pour is. It's going to be phenomenal. We've made enough, by the way, to go across the whole country. So we'll actually like to put that out there.
Great.
It'll be a fun product.
So we're
Hey,
hitting.
Ian, what's that? Is that cigar blend finished?
No, it's not a finished product. It's straight. It's
All
just a
American
combination of
whiskey.
American whiskeys. There's no finish to it.
So we're hitting the end here at about hour and 15 minutes. But Um, we wanted to announce that we're going to have our Penelope X barrel pick coming soon.
Ooh.
Corey, I don't believe, made the call today or the video, but he promised it'd be here within a month to a month and a half where it's free. Is that correct?
Oh, that's not on me. I'm staying quiet. It's nothing to do with me.
We have it in writing.
That's between you and him. I'm not getting involved. But yeah, he said anywhere 30 to 45 days it should be. You guys should have.
So we picked a cognac finish barrel. It's really good. I don't remember the proof on it.
Yeah, I don't think they told us, but it's a really cool bottle. First time it's a black bottle, I believe,
Yeah.
with the X on it, and it's yeah, there you go. In comments, but yeah, hopefully we'll get one of the first ones here in California for our group.
Who's the retailer for this one?
High proof.
Oh, it is. Okay. Got it. Oh, here it is. I got your barrel right here. Actually, it is, or we bought, so I have access to our system here, so you get this live information feed.
Excellent.
It's all done on our end, and it is literally just waiting to ship. So
That is good
Sweet.
news. It was very good. So, all right. Well, any last questions here?
I think we're good.
All right.
Hey,
Well, I know
anybody
you
in
guys.
Huntington? Anybody in Huntington wants some Havana? Hit me up. I'm gonna open it next.
Hey, Dylan. All right. All right. So, I know you guys are on East Coast time, so we're gonna let you get off here and rest. Get your 3 hours of sleep that you're not at the distillery there. But thank you so much. This was great information and great pours. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I was really excited because I see a light whiskey, I'm like, I'm not gonna buy that. And so this was really fun to try something new that I've never had. So I appreciate it a lot. So thank you.
no, you're welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
everyone.
us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
huge pleasure.
All right, guys, take care.
See ya.
See you soon.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.